Hey, fellow patriots, I'm Bree.
And I'm Blaze. Some call me Pa. It has been said that we have 4 boxes to keep ourselves free. These are the soapbox, the ballot box, the jury box, and the ammo box.
And we are the 4th box. We are here to arm you with enough information, resources, and skills to take back your freedom, increase your self-sufficiency, and inspire you to join in the fight against tyranny.
Thomas Jefferson said, "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Thank you for joining us and for joining in this fight.
Welcome back to the 4th box. Alrighty, everybody. Welcome back to another week at the 4th Box podcast. We remind you quite often what the 4 boxes are, but this week more than ever, it feels like we really need to use the 4th box. And a lot of what we're talking about tonight, I'm sure you can guess, is going to be related to the most recent dump of the Epstein files. And these are things that we've been suspicious of and have made some mention of in some instances as we've done this show. But a lot of the things we haven't kind of dove that deep into. And to be quite honest, they're so disgusting and disturbing that I don't think we've really wanted to, and we won't get in too far to the details tonight for that reason. So that said, for anyone not interested in hearing about this conversation, this is your cue to just wait until next week. But for everyone who is interested to hear what we have to say about everything that's going on right now with some of the truth that is being revealed, please stick along and join us through this episode, because I think it's an important conversation that, though it is being discussed, it is being talked about, it's not being talked about enough, and we're going to do our part to bring some light to some of the things that have come out so far. So with that, hey, Pops, how are you doing?
Doing good, yeah. Still in the middle of winter here. We've had a couple of weeks of really cold weather. We're up in around 20 now, which is like a heat wave from what we've had. So it's been an old-fashioned winter. We are certainly happy if you're joining us again tonight. Coming to you once again from the virtual Buckman Tavern, the place that patrons gather here at the 4th Box podcast. We're going to get into some of the things you just talked about. So much going on. It's just crazy around the country. I think we could talk for hours and hours tonight again, not only specifically about the topic you mentioned, but a few other things that are pretty big hitters, and hopefully we'll have a chance to squeeze them in. Before that, I got a long list of toasts tonight. I'm having the last of a milk stout, and look at here, I have my koozie from one of my favorite sandwich stops in the whole country. That's at the Creekside Deli out in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Love that place. Good people up there. But I'm toasting, first of all, I'm toasting Jared, our good friend who's been on the podcast 3 or 4 times with us, and Mike and the rest of the landowners who are standing in the face of the corporate interest out there, being assisted by our own government overrunning private landowners as they try to cram another green energy scam down our throat called the carbon capture. And as we know, had been in conversation with Jared over the last week or so. He appeared at the state capitol in Pierre on behalf of the landowners of South Dakota and other states. So I'm raising my milk stout to Jared.
Cheers. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. They're doing a lot of hard work out there and keeping people's hands to the fire. So really some awesome patriots. Really glad we got to meet those guys. Secondly, I want to toast Trump administration again, and when they do something that we're really in favor of, I'm going to call it out, and conversely, if we don't, I'm going to call the other way. But, last week, the reports come out that he has removed the United States from the World Health Organization. I think that is a great move. We don't need to be dictated to by the globalists who running the World Health Organization. Of course, American money, American taxpayers' money is a big part of that thing.
and he apparently has moved us, United States of America, from that organization. And I say 3 cheers to that. It's another step toward removing us from the United Nations. That would be my next request. So a toast to Trumpy and the boys on that one. And lastly, this week, I'm going to toast my co-host here with me, my eldest daughter, Brianna, who became engaged over the weekend. We're very excited about that.
Woo!
Yeah, congratulations, Bree.
Thank you.
Very, very happy. That's a great winding down of the Christmas holiday season for us here in our family. So salute to all those things.
Cheers.
And then what I wanted to do also from a longtime listener, a regular listener of ours, we were given these great shirts. The Constitution doesn't need to be rewritten. It needs to be reread. And I say 3 cheers to that. I'll make sure I have this on next week.
Remind me. We'll match.
Yeah, we'll get those on next week. So I just wanted to give a shout out to one of our longtime listeners that provided us those shirts.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so the quote tonight: the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state government are numerous and indefinite. The former will be exercised principally on external objects: war, peace, negotiation, foreign commerce. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all objects which in the ordinary course of affairs concern the lives and liberties and properties of the people and the internal order, improvement, and prosperity of the state. Guess what, folks? That spells it out perfectly clear. And that was from none other than James Madison, one of the principal authors of the Constitution. He was saying right then and there that the federal government's main function is to take care of outside objects, things outside of the internal United States. War and peace and negotiation and foreign commerce. That is what the federal government was reserved to. The states were supposed to manage all the rest. So when your state, my state, all the states kneel to the federal government is absolutely the opposite of the way this thing was supposed to work. Just like the Mac Prince case at the U.S. Supreme Court, if only our state legislators knew about that and had the backbone to act on that. But they don't. But I thought that was a great quote. We need to call that to mind. People need to understand the way this thing was supposed to work. And that's the way it was supposed to work. The federal government was supposed to take care of outside interest. The internal workings of this country were to be left to the states. And that's what we need to get back to.
Yeah, I'm really glad you did bring that quote up. You know, tonight we originally kind of had in mind talking about something going on up here in New Hampshire. There's been so many things that have happened that we sort of switch gears a little bit. But while we're at it, I would like to just call attention to what that is. And in truth, it seems quite trivial with everything going on. But I still just want to bring it up while we're cheersing things because the outcome is kind of turning out better than I hoped. So basically, the quick overview here is that New Hampshire is a state that still has annual vehicle inspections. The state had determined through a bill middle of last year ish that those would be going away the 31st of January this year. So that was all set to happen. Everything was good. And then a federal judge ruled basically on like the 30th or the 29th, just days before. He put an injunction on that. He said, nope, we can't do that because, you know, the EPA needs emissions testing and blah, 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 whatever. And it just triggered me because I was like, this is not your jurisdiction. As a federal judge, you have absolutely no business at all knowing or caring or even like remotely looking into what's happening at the state level with vehicles. It's not your place. It's not your responsibility. We're paying you to do work, and this isn't it. And so I was just immediately fired up. And I knew that no matter what, my stance wasn't going to change. The state had ruled on this. The state had made a decision for me to be acting within the Constitution. That meant I didn't have to go and get a vehicle inspection. And I've actually been very, very glad to see that almost every police department in the state, I can't speak for all of them. I haven't looked at all of them, but many of them, everyone that I've looked at, has issued notice that they will not be enforcing that. At this time, it's basically been delayed until April. So they're saying, some of them are just saying flat out, this isn't their place. We're going to just ignore this. Others are saying, hey, right now, we aren't going to pull you over for this. We're going to let it ride until April, and then we'll revisit it. So I'm happy to see that in the state that is live free or die, there are, police officers and police departments that are recognizing that from a constitutional standpoint, there's nothing they can do if people in this state do not proceed with getting vehicle inspections, because the state ruled on something. That means we're good. It doesn't matter what a federal judge says now.
No, it doesn't.
And I think it's an incredible example of what should be happening in every state. Every single time this type of thing happens, where a federal judge issues any sort of ruling, injunction, blah, 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 that is exactly what needs to happen at the local level. They need to go, cool, great, we're not enforcing it. Because just like that, problem's over, resolves itself. We were going to do a whole episode about it tonight, and already we don't need to. So cheers to the police departments in the state that are standing up for the Constitution, for our state rights, for our freedoms, for the things that the people demanded. And, I just hope that other states see what went on here with this one small thing, and hopefully are able to use that as an example for other things in the future.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I hope the sheriff's offices up there also are participating in holding back unconstitutional mandates that come from the federal government. All they have to do is say, no, it isn't going to happen here. And who are they going to send to enforce it? When they come in and try and enforce it, arrest them. The states are sovereign within their borders, except for the specific things that were delegated to the Constitution. And everybody needs to get their head wrapped around that. And a lot of these problems go away. Most of them go away.
Yep. Yeah. So, we will kind of come back at some point, I think, in the episode to the precedence of the state having more say than the federal government with a lot of these things. That will be something hopefully we make our circle back to. But I know you had a couple things you wanted to get into, and I am pretty certain that once I start talking about this Epstein file dump, I'm going to get carried away.
Okay.
So I want to give you the floor right now in case there's anything you want to make sure we touch before I start getting into this stuff.
Well, sure. Okay, so we'll go through these real quick. Couple of big points. Everybody's aware of them. The first one, I'm sure almost everybody that has eyes to see and ears to hear is aware of, and that's the circus going on in Minneapolis and other places around the country where the rent-a-rioters, the dimwits that are able to be coaxed into behaving completely irrationally. Again, we point out when the federal government is out of bounds, and I want everybody to understand one thing. First of all, the country is solidly, 70% of the country is in favor of ICE enforcing the border policies that exist. So all the noise being made, like there's these huge numbers of people throughout the country, there simply is not. 70% are in favor of ICE and federal agencies taking care of the border as is prescribed in the Constitution. One of the few actual delegated authorities that they have. So because the media is complicit, because they are a bunch of spineless skunks that are only going after the money, they are promoting this into a much bigger thing than it is. And the dimwits that are easily led around by what the television tells them to do, that would be the herd that runs out and gets the shot every time somebody says it. That's what we should be doing, and we need to be out there riding. These are the same people that have absolutely no knowledge that somewhere between 25 and 30 people were killed by ICE during the Obama administration years because of extenuating circumstances. Of course, none of us want anybody to be getting killed. Police in this country are not supposed to be killing people. I get it. But people are not supposed to be out on the streets of this country destroying businesses, ripping cities apart, pushing their luck with law enforcement, getting in the face of law enforcement, stepping in front of cars, and all this other nonsense. You got to be pretty small and pretty dim to, hey, going out and holding up a sign and standing and making sure your opinion is heard, voice is heard is one thing. But becoming aggressive with law enforcement officers that are there to do a duty, a constitutionally mandated duty, that takes a pretty dim bulb. So anyway, the big news is the majority of the country is solidly behind the immigration people enforcing the borders with the laws that are in effect, solidly behind that. To follow that up, my second point, the voter ID. Voter ID. This was amazing on CNN, of all places. They have a poll that goes back 5 or 6 years, and they show the overall appetite of America toward voter ID. It hits an all-time high right now, 83%. 95% of Republicans, 71% of Democrats are in favor of a form of a photo ID for voters. It's the only way we can take a serious step at making our elections worth anything. Because until they do that, we are going to get mobbed by whatever force wants to stuff the ballot box. So the majority of the country is solidly behind this. Do not listen to what all these other pundits and propaganda spreaders are saying. This was on CNN, folks. This is not a legacy media outlet that is standing for conservative or constitutional or libertarian principles. This is an organization that is solidly swung to the communist agenda, and they are pointing out the obvious, that the country is 7/8, just under 7/8 of this country is in favor of enforcing voter ID, picture voter ID. So apparently there's enough people awake to recognize the only way we get this thing back on track is to get away from the cheating and all the crap that has gone on for many elections before this. So those are the 2 points I wanted to mention.
Yeah, awesome. The immigration stuff is definitely on my list here a little bit later, because some of the stuff that we're going to be talking about, I just, there's been ample opportunity to have a reaction on this podcast or on social media or otherwise about the stuff that has gone on in Minneapolis. And I've strategically not done it because I believe it's fabricated the same way almost everything is. So we'll get into that. But I do think that your points are incredibly valid and important for people to recognize that we are the majority when we want these things to happen. And, to your point too, we still aren't even close to the numbers that were deported in the Biden era. And that's not even close at all to the Obama era. So if that doesn't tell you that this shit is completely manipulated bullshit propaganda just to get us at each other's throats, then what does? I mean, the numbers don't even back that up, that level of anger up. It doesn't. It's not real. Everything we're seeing is completely distorted by a messenger that wants us to only hear their side of the message.
Yep.
So, all that said, all this stuff that's going on in the world, everything that the current administration is doing, everything that is going on at the state level, whether it's the stuff going on with Jared out there in South Dakota or vehicle inspections in New Hampshire, I can't really give a shit about any of it, if I'm being honest, because the Epstein file stuff is so startling and appalling to me. And I recognize it shouldn't be, because I've been saying this stuff for years. I've been telling people this stuff is real for years. Years, way before we started this podcast. And you wanted the Epstein files to come out. We all did so bad so that we could be validated in that. So that we could go, okay, I knew I wasn't crazy. These were not conspiracy theories. These were realities. And now that that's coming to light, it is somehow still startling to me.
Yeah.
I knew, but now I actually know, and it's worse than what I could have imagined.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of want to talk about all this stuff tonight, because it's so important that we do not take our eye off of the most important thing, the most pressing thing. We talk about it quite often, that everything that's going on in our country, around the world, it's a spiritual war. And we're not saying that to be facetious or, to try and black pill anybody. We're saying it because it's reality. And the Epstein files, the most recent dump, has proved that to be so true and so accurate. It's almost hard to believe. It almost is hard to fathom the fact that we're living in a world that is actually controlled by demons. Mm-hmm. That sounds insane to most people. I think even now that a lot of files have come out, and it's like 3 million pages worth, and it's still like less than 10%, less than 5% of what's even there. Mm-hmm. So by the time that this episode airs on Thursday, this most recent batch will be already a week old. And I'm sure nothing will have been done, right? People will still be talking about it, but is that it? Yeah. Probably. So a couple things I want to touch on right off the bat before I hand it over to you. And then I've got a whole list here, as I like to do sometimes.
Let's go through it.
Let's go through it. So first question is, what did this batch of files reveal for anyone who has not made themselves aware? And to be honest, I don't recommend looking into it that deep, because it's actually horrible. What I would say is that we were right about almost everything. Almost everything that has been considered a conspiracy in this category forever, it's been proven to be true. We were wrong about Trump. And I think there was a part of us that has questioned that for a while. I think we were like, it could happen that he is involved or was involved, but I don't think so. And I didn't. I really didn't. I thought probably he was just covering up for, people he knew, which wasn't great. Or he had some grand scheme of plan, some hidden agenda to try and do something in the name of good. I don't know what I thought. I guess I was just trying to justify the fact that we had to pick between two evils and we picked one. I don't know. I really genuinely didn't think he was going to be involved in the level that he is in these files. And also, I already mentioned it. It also revealed to us that every conspiracy theory that was ever had by any conspiracy theorist out there, the truth is worse. So that's so alarming. And I want to just kind of touch on what some of those things are without getting into too many details. First of all, we were right in believing that Epstein was an Israeli Mossad agent. That's real. And we were right in believing that pretty much all of this shit is controlled and manipulated by the Israeli government, the Zionists. And the whole thing is just a system of blackmail, control over their people, and control over the masses, and quite literally satanic worship. We were right when we talked about them worshiping gods like Baal and Moloch. That wasn't crazy. That wasn't some wild conspiracy when we were talking about the gods of human sacrifice. That was real. We were right when, and I don't think we've ever discussed it on here, but people like us have made mention that the Zionists have been manipulating everything to keep us enslaved and refer to us as goy or goyim, which essentially means cattle. Any non-Jew is just less than human, which is why they don't care if they're sacrificing our children or a number of disgusting things. Pizzagate was real. Adrenochrome is real. Trafficking of children, homeless people, we know that's real, but now we know why. We knew why. Now we know that we were right in thinking so. Harvesting of human organs, real. Leads me to question, I don't think there's anything in the files about this yet that we've seen, but it really has always made me question why abortion has such a push. I would say, one, the utilization of the cells of a fetus for these purposes, as well as just ritualistic sacrifice. I mean, we're aborting how many babies a day in this country and around the world, and there's a huge push for it. It's a pretty good way to have a constant stream of sacrifices to your demon god without ever getting blood on your hands. That's, I'm sidetracking, but, and we were right when we said that politicians, celebrities, and the ultra wealthy were raping, killing, and actually eating children. That's real, and it's in there, and there's 3 million pages to support it, and that's a tenth of what actually exists as far as evidence. So I do kind of want to talk about the things that are new that we didn't know, but before I do that, I'm just going to pass it over to you.
Yeah, as more of this comes out, my level of amazement only further increases. And by that, I mean, like you said, this is going to air on Thursday. We're recording on Tuesday. So last night we had one of these self-glorifying award ceremonies. I believe this one was called the Grammys. And we got, half the country sitting around with their mouth hanging open, idolizing the very people that are mixed up with the stuff we're talking about, or many of them are. And somehow we as a society have found it okay in our heart to be idolizing the same people that are at the very least associated with folks that are doing this kind of thing. And we seem so nonchalant about it that all the rich and powerful and celebrity type, not all, but many, many, many of them, people in high places, as we've said forever and ever, there's evil among us and it sits in high places. This is the evidence to support that. But most importantly, before we get into any more of the topics you want to touch on, I think today, this being Tuesday, Tom Massey said it all. If we don't do something, we're part of the cover-up. He made an appeal to Congress. We had better do something or we are complicit in the cover-up. And thank you, Tom Massey, for that. Hopefully there are enough clear thinkers down there, despite who's greasing their pocketbook for them, that this stuff needs to come out fully. There needs to be complete justification through our system, and these people removed, their wealth taken away, and paid in restitution to families or survivors of the stuff that has gone on. This is another call for Nuremberg. This is beyond what has happened on battlefields and everything. This is to innocent people and children. And to think that those people that are in a position of power, with, if nothing else, if no constitution ever existed, they are there to protect the least among us. And they are taking advantage of them. This is truly the evil among us that we have talked about for a very long time. There is stuff that is beyond imagination, and I'm sure it's not all documented. And this stuff is going on by the people that lord it over us, and we're sitting back tolerating it, or worse yet, watching this garbage. You might remember, Bree, when you were really little, and I told you we're not. I want nothing to do with Hollywood. I want nothing to do with those weirdos out there. You could tell as an adult and trying to protect you kids, you can tell that these people are not right and they're evil. And what they're promoting is evil. And that was why, all the way back 30 years ago, when you were little, I tried to steer us all away from that, because you could feel the rot coming out of there just like you can coming out of DC.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you said it, we don't even really have that much of what's going on. I mean, we're starting to see it, and I don't know how many people have even seen what has come out in the last few days. I mean, sure, something like the Grammys goes on, that's a distraction, but so is everything else. Everything else.
Yep.
And when you recognize that these are not just creepy freaks of human beings who have weird fetishes, it's everyone in power. Again, okay, sorry. Almost everyone in a position of power, almost everyone who's ultra wealthy is involved. It's because this is not something that you just fall into. These are demonic entities. All of that shit that is thousands of years old, that was discussed in the Bible, is real and walking among us. And until people recognize that that is not a story of fiction, there is not going to be any change in our demeanor towards what's going on. And there's not going to be a solution, because the solution, as much as it's great that Thomas Massey is standing for accountability and standing for arrest, standing for us to do something, the solution is not of this world, because the evil is not of this world. It's not just creepy people. It's actual demons. We're draining the blood of humans, and we're drinking it, and we're performing these ritual. I mean, it's the things that are happening are so disturbing, because we can't fathom it, because we're not demons. Mm-hmm. So for all the people who think this stuff can't be real, that's awesome. That's great. We can't think about it as really going on, because our minds don't work that way. Mm-hmm. Because we're human beings with a soul. Mm-hmm. The people that are doing this stuff are not. And I think that's the line that we have to draw, and we have to understand. It is so much more evil than what we could do ourselves as humans, no matter how bad we are sometimes. These are people that are worshiping Satan in such disturbing and appalling ways. And there are so many things that are coming out in these files that we didn't even know, that were beyond even our wildest conspiracy theories. And I think one of them that's important to touch on here is transgenderism. Mm-hmm. And this is something, to some degree, we knew was being controlled by those in power. We knew that this is a tool for, one, making a lot of money for those in power off pharmaceutical sales, sure. And we know that this is kind of a prerequisite for the collapse of a society. We didn't think, at least I didn't, that somebody was pushing it so hard to collapse a society. I thought it was more or less the pharmaceutical sales and just the general corruption of the human mind. But when we look at these files, we start to understand that it was also part of all of these other sick and disturbing things that were going on. And it was to quite literally create degenerate sexual fantasies for people to use. Mm-hmm. So when they being these demons when they tried to manipulate parents around the country into thinking the right thing to do was just start giving your kid hormones as soon as they had any normal kid question, like, oh, like, what if I was a boy, if they're a girl, like normal things that a 3-year-old just doesn't, even have like an understanding of yet. When they start telling you, like, yeah, give them hormones, it's because they're trying to prey on your child.
Mm-hmm.
That is insane. That is next level insane. It's like bad enough that we're doing it, but when you understand that that's the root, I don't understand how, like, this isn't the only thing that every single person in this country is talking about right now. Yeah. It is so, like, I just can't stop thinking about this stuff. And yeah, go ahead.
Now, here's, it's such a disaster. Here's where my mind goes. You remember way back in the beginning of COVID, and everybody runs along, and they went along, and I said that this is a test balloon. And I think this is what it was for. I think this was a setup to make sure that they could steer the herd back away. This is not going to get the attention it deserves. The point you just made, the whole country ought to be with pitchforks and torches right now, looking for people to string up. Looking for these people that are all involved and all mentioned through here, and we're going to make sure that this never happens again. But where's the outcry? Where is the country boiling over with rage, let alone the rest of the world? Where is it in this country? They can steer us away by whatever means necessary, by downplaying it, by diminishing it, just like everybody else who tried to espouse truth. Ron Paul, for example, back in 2008, all they had to do was use the media, the propaganda arm, and steer the people away by calling this guy some old crazed lunatic or whatever and marginalize him. And I think the COVID was the next step to realize they can just steer public opinion simply right away from what is obvious in front of them. And I think COVID proved that. They can steer this country to jump off a cliff, and the majority of them are going to do it. So I think Massey's point was, look at, even though everybody out there might be sleeping, maybe the majority, maybe 80% of them aren't ever going to give a lick of attention to this or believe anything that comes out. We still have a job to do.
Yeah.
We need to push this through to completion. He says what the only thing that we can do without being complicit is we got to be perp walking the rich and the famous to pay their just due, just like any of the rest of us would. They need to be perp walking. And that was his point. And I think that was it. I think he recognizes there isn't going to be a huge public outcry. There's not. We would have felt it already.
Yeah.
We're going to move on to the Super Bowl, by God, and that's the most important thing. And we got Crazy Bunny or Dumb Bunny or whatever the hell it is, and we got all this noise about this, and we got the biggest story in the history of humankind coming out about the evil at the top of the world political economic ladder that is involved with the deepest, filthiest rot imaginable, and it's going to drift on past.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Massey was trying to say is we got a job to do. It doesn't matter if there's political pressure one way or another. We got a job to do. Now, whether or not he gets the support, I'll tell you what, I'll be surprised.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it weren't for him, who's to say, though, if would have even seen what we have so far. So I give him a lot of credit. I give Ro Khanna a lot of credit. There are a few people down there who have not let up on this, despite what it might mean for them. So I certainly commend them. Couple other things that I want to touch on that came out that we didn't know in the files before going into just a couple other thoughts that I have. QAnon and 4chan, complete and total controlled psyops, which is crazy because these were really where a lot of these conspiracy theories were discussed. This is how so many people came to learn about things like Pizzagate and adrenochrome years back, because people were dropping these hints. And when you think about, what these channels are now, they were manipulated created from the very source that has been doing all of this evil. It goes back to an episode that we had a long time ago discussing some of these things, discussing things like Moloch, discussing things like child sacrifice. And we discussed that part of this whole deal, part of, being in this agreement with Satan is you have to tell us what you're doing. That's part of it. And there's several theories onto why that is, but they have to kind of let us know. So they drop these little carrots. They've been doing it for years, and we've seen that in various places. But when you realize that these channels that were very much used to discuss these things were started by the very people committing the crime, and then also used to say, oh, this is just some alternative wacky conspiracy theorist crap, it should shift the way that you see everything in your world around you. It should, because these are sources that, though they were alternative and though they were sort of out there as far as, ideologies go, a lot of people turn to them for information.
Mm-hmm.
So that really goes to show us how manipulated all of this stuff is. And QAnon, that was a major supporter for Trump,
mm-hmm.
which I'm going to get into in a moment here too. But then Bitcoin is a psyop invented and completely controlled by these insane people that are doing all this other shit. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think that what a lot of people are realizing is that, all these digital currencies, these coin currencies that we've discussed, are going to lead to a complete shift in the economy globally. And it's going to result in another massive wealth transfer, making the rich richer,
mm-hmm.
and making everybody else more of a slave.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going to happen. And it's because all of these things have been ingrained in this grand plan that is 2,000 years old, mind you. This is not something that Jeffrey Epstein came up with himself 25 years ago. This is a 2,000-year-old biblical prophecy, okay? That's what's happening. But all that said, when you think about the fact that QAnon was created by these same people and that Trump was really pushed through QAnon was like, hey, Trump's going to be our guy. There's a lot of bad stuff going on, but Trump's an outsider and Trump's going to be our guy. He was a plant from the beginning. And I didn't think that until now, but now I do. And maybe somebody will prove me wrong. Maybe there's still hope for him. I don't think so. I think my mind is made up. I think that he was a plant. I think the fact that QAnon wanted him so bad in this position. And I think that the people that are really pulling the strings way outside of our government, people we've discussed before, the shadowy elite, these people needed somebody who posed themselves as an outsider, who wasn't a politician, because they knew that we were all waking up. They knew we could see it. They knew we were sniffing them out. And so they needed to sell us somebody who was going to fix that problem. And though we knew he wouldn't, we said that from the beginning. We know he's not our savior. He's not a white knight. I genuinely thought he was enough against the deep state, which is much bigger, again, than just our own country's deep inner circles. I thought he was enough against those things that I believed he would do what he could, which probably an uphill battle regardless of who you are. Now I think he's probably been bought out by those same people for a very, very long time, as long as anyone else who's ever taken a president seat in this country. This is not something that some presidents just didn't notice when they were in power.
Mm-hmm.
Another entity has been controlling our government, our president, everyone who makes decisions for us for many, 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 many years. Since we have been invaded by this entity, which I'm not sure when that first was.
Yeah.
But
I don't know if I'm on the exact same flight path you are on that. I'm holding out hope that maybe there's still some resistance left in him, that he's not part of the whole thing. But with the number of contacts and mentions of Trump throughout those documents, it really does give you pause. You don't think he's just part of, they bumped shoulders up at some club in Manhattan or something. There's too many instances, I think thousands of notations of some contact with Trump. So again, like you said, we knew only we can save us. It'd be nice to believe that we had somebody in government that was working along with us. That would be nice, but we know, we have mentioned it for a long time, only we can save us. There is nobody going to step into a Supreme Court position or a president position or some leadership position in the House or the Senate and be able to save us if we are not fighting to save ourselves. So, one of the other points while you were talking and I was thinking about, I read an article today, and this is just shifting gears a little bit, but it kind of ties back in. They said the people that are fomenting this unrest, such as you see in Minneapolis and all the rest, they want some martyrs. That builds a bigger support base. This is the whole Bolshevik revolution in action here. And so they want some people to get killed up there. They don't care how it happens. They want to demonize and to create this rift between us. Guess what? Another distraction from getting back to the point we're just talking about. And I wouldn't be a bit surprised if we've moved all kind of military assets into the Middle East, ready, posing, posturing, rattling our saber about Iran. We got senators down there pounding on the table, demanding that we start a kinetic war with Iran. And guess what? All of a sudden, to the point we were making earlier, probably 70, 80% of the people aren't going to pay much attention to it anyway. But if we get embroiled in another conflict, guess what? All of it goes away again. We got a 24-hour news cycle and maybe a 24-hour attention span between the majority of people in this country, and it's forgotten. We're moving on to the next big story. So if we get a conflict going in Greenland, Taiwan, Iran, and whatever other number play, Cuba now, Cuba's another hot one on the list. Russia landed a plane down here. It's a failing nation state. All of this rhetoric ready to move us into some global conflict, quite possibly, to take the attention off the very people that created it and have this other mess of debauchery and filth and evil that's now been attached to them. So I would not be surprised if within the next week or two there isn't all hell breaking loose. And the majority of people where we could be applying pressure from the people, we the people, pitchforks and torches, we could be applying the pressure. It'll be crickets. That's what I'm afraid of.
Oh, same. Me too. And that's exactly where I was going to go next, was that the distractions, the deception, it is too great. When we think about this as being what it is, a plan that is 2,000 years old by people who have been at this game for their entire lives, you have to understand that they have thought out every possible next step, and they're ahead of us because people are still slowly waking up to what's actually happening. People are still completely asleep to what's actually happening. The other people, in this case, the enemy here, they've been at this for way longer than us. So they have inclinations of what we might try to do, what we might be distracted by, and they just keep flying under the radar because of it. The ICE violence, exactly where I was going to take this. The stuff going on in Minneapolis. I have not talked about it. I have not said my opinion on it. Do I think federal agents should be killing a guy because he's holding a weapon? And the story is broader than that, right? But in general, no, I don't. You said it earlier. We don't really want anyone to be killed. Actually, that's our stance. But the whole thing happening in just Minneapolis, ICE is operating all over the country.
Mm-hmm.
And the only place that we're seeing this level of violence and subsequent rioting is in the city that was just busted for insane amounts of fraud. Isn't that a little weird?
Mm-hmm.
Like, hello. This is the whole George Floyd thing all over again. But then when you can take that story and you can distract from the one thing and you can blow it up into a much bigger national story and start riling people up all over the country, now you have everybody at each other's throats because I support ICE and I don't, and I want illegals to stay here and I know they shouldn't. And you have all this shit going on. Meanwhile, we're not talking about the actual evil that is controlling our emotions, controlling the situation, controlling our reaction to it, and they're still gonna go on and go about their lives and do this crazy shit, and we're just gonna be too busy fighting about that thing.
Exactly.
It's theater.
And just another side note to that, talking about Minneapolis and how specifically a lot of this is really focused there, and nowhere else is it receiving the amount of attention, or is there the amount of. But just another side note to that, and I listened to a report today. I haven't been able to confirm it, but apparently the Satanists, the Satan cultists, whatever they are, were giving Walls credit for allowing them to gather in the Capitol and to celebrate openly. The Satanists were. So, you're talking about talking about the evil spirits. Well, the evil spirits, I suspect, are like other spirits. They're here forever and ever. So the spirits that we're dealing with, talking about the ancient Bible stories 4,000 years ago, they have been working on their game as well as we Christians have been working on ours. They are involved with all of the technologies of today, all the mind control stuff that's out there today to steer us, and we have useful idiots up there. I'm sorry, that's a Lenin thing, by the way. If you ever look back at where that whole thing come from, Vladimir Lenin, I believe, but. They want those people to get up there and to be. They're encouraging them. They're taking them in, warming them up, getting charged up on coffee, feeding them, and sending them back out after they're all revved up. They want a few of them people to get killed. The furthers, and these folks that are out there carrying out these wishes don't even realize that they're pawns. They are pawns in being used in a bigger game that's so far beyond that what maybe they really think they're being noble. They are being played. Anyway, I wanted to mention that thing about up, and I watched a YouTube thing where all these Satanists were gathered, and who knows, maybe it's an AI thing. But Walls was being given all this credit for, participating with the Satanists and all this kind of thing. So who the heck knows?
Oh, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's such a good point, too, without even getting into that tangent too far. Like, how much of what any of us is seeing is AI? How will we know? I mean, every part of the country can be being fed a different crazy story that's AI, and the other won't even know, but you're going to be mad at somebody because of it. And that, we have no way to know that. And you just said it. That's such an incredible point. We're talking about, biblical, ancient, demonic gods, right? It sounds very crazy, and you don't have a good way to wrap your head around it. But when you think about them as just being manifested in human form, you have to understand that they do have those same tools. So, of course, they can use things like this. I think that some people are going to be lost by this conversation, and that's fine because the conversation isn't for you if that's the case. You have to understand that this is actually the level of, insanity that we're dealing with. And it's not just mumbo jumbo. It's real. And if you can't feel that in your heart and in your soul, then you're lost probably already. The one thing that I did want to say, with the ICE stuff that really scares me is that with everything else going on, all these truths that are being sprinkled into our lives now, just in passing, it's no big deal. The ICE stuff is still very real, and I am still very afraid about the entire AI conversation, because I truly think that when we think about, the World Economic Forum and the push for AI, like we talked about with Jeff last week, with all of these, tech billionaires, what it feels like is coming is that this whole situation with ICE is going to be used as a proxy for a police state controlled by AI. And if that happens, the rest of us will still be going about this like confused, chaotic life that we're all living, where we can't like focus our attention on one thing. We're so distracted by the Grammys, by the Super Bowl, by the violence like that we're seeing in our social media feeds, that we're not noticing this AI driven surveillance state swooping in and taking total control of our lives. And when we finally are awake enough and aware enough of what is happening with the things like the Epstein files, with the things that we've been talking about the rest of this episode, we won't be able to talk about it, and we won't be able to communicate with one another to plan a solution of any kind, because you won't even be able to mention these things on the internet that are controlled by the very same people, mind you, without getting a knock on your door. Mm-hmm. That is scary. That should be a real concern to everybody, because this will come fast. If it comes, it will come overnight.
I think if you read anything by John Whitehead and his wife over on the muck rack, and he will have told you that it's here. This stuff is here, and they can pull the trigger on it anytime they want to. The whole police state has been slowly, quietly moving into position. It has for a long time. You look at the way them cops look out there. They look like a Navy SEAL team going in to get bin Laden or something standing on the street. They're not out there to protect and serve. Mm-hmm. And this is the flip side of that thing. We had that conversation a little bit after it was back from the meeting with the sheriffs out there. The police departments need to be under the control of we the people, not some other government entity, because there is no control. The government entity is the evil that has been placed upon us. And now you're giving them all the muscle by providing all these federal agencies with, law enforcement authority and all these weapons and millions of rounds that they've been stockpiling for years and years. This stuff we have walked ourselves into the pen. And the fourth box is the only solution. And before long, it's going to be much like Winston Churchill said. You can choose to fight when you have a great chance of winning and very little chance of everybody. Or you can fight when, it's going to be a real struggle to prevent, or you can fight with very little chance of winning, or you can fight just, you're going to die, but to keep from becoming a slave. And that was the basic, I paraphrased a little bit, but that was something that Winston Churchill said years and years ago. And we are at that point. We no longer have a great chance of success here. And quite honestly, we have probably the last thing. We're going to die on a hill just to keep from living in change, because the majority of the people, and that's what it takes. So, like we've always said, if the masses stood together, there's so many more of us. But most people aren't aware. They are not aware, nor would they have any time to listen to anything like this. Mm-hmm. This is all pie in the sky crazy talk to them. Mm-hmm. That's the scary thing. Most people don't want to hear any of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's 100% true. And so it's kind of going to bring me to the last point that I wanted to make before we close out here. And that's that I think that there's another box that we talk about, but we don't phrase it as such. The fifth box is Jesus Christ alone. And we talk about it every week. We talk about how, we do the Bible verse. We talk about how, especially when we have conversations like this, you have to have a relationship with God at this point, because we're getting close to the end times. Like, things are getting pretty real. You got to start to figure out which side of the line you're going to fall on. Are you going to stand with these evil children eating people, or are you going to stand on the side of good? Kind of getting close to crunch time on making a decision there. And
yeah,
I wanted to kind of make mention of this because I was trying to do some research into what does the Bible say is the answer for this type of thing? Like, the Bible tells us that we should use authority to uphold justice. Okay, well, what if the people in positions of authority are the ones committing the evil? And I kind of had come up with like a few points, and one of them was that we're called to stand for justice even against unjust authorities. So we might not be able to take action, but it doesn't mean we get to stay quiet. It's our duty to speak out and speak up on these things. And I am never going to stop doing that. And I think people like Thomas Massey are never going to stop doing that. There are people who are truly committed to this, and it's going to take as many people with that mindset as possible for change to happen. But it's also our spiritual role to play in this. It's a spiritual war, yes. Well, what is our job? To just sit by and like wait around? No, we still have to do something. So it is our job to be spreading this message and to be waking up as many people as possible to like the real disgusting and disturbing truths of what's happening here, because these are the conversations we should be having. Yeah, I was like worked up about the, vehicle inspection thing, but is that the end all be all? No, it actually isn't even like close to what is the most serious and pressing thing. The other thing that was kind of an answer here was that we should still look to authority, but where else can we look within that role? And this is why I was glad that you used that quote in the beginning, because you mentioned the whole bit that we talk about all the time. We should go to the local level for all of our problems. But even this, what can the people that are most local, closest to you, who are in government do for the people above them, so that the people above them do something for the people above them, and then that person does something for the federal government, where it seems like a lot of these real problems are lying? Or maybe it is the global politicians or the celebrities or just the, some of these same tech billionaires that have these ideas of complete and total a slave state of everyone in the global population. Like, let's start at the local level and work our way up, because we're not going to walk down to the White House and knock on the door and be like, citizens arrest, you did something uncool. That's not going to happen. What can we do? We have to start at the local level, even with this. This is something we've been talking about since episode 1. Now we're talking about the spiritual component, the spiritual war that's going on, and this is still the solution. And last but not least, I think the biggest thing here is that we have to pray for discernment. Again, something we've talked about on this show. Not a new concept, not a new idea. This is a spiritual battle, and our enemy is actually Satan and all of his demons who walk among us. There's only so much that we can do. So we have to pray for discernment. We have to pray for guidance and pray for a solution and justice at from a higher authority than what we can find here on earth, because I don't think there's punishment enough that we can give for the things that have gone on.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all I've had to say about that.
Well, and you probably, in the last 3 or 4 minutes there, you probably provided enough baseline information to have a whole nother episode, but to just pick a couple of those things apart. So you're right. We always have to be working at the local level. Part of what we bump into at the local level is the point we made earlier, that 80% of the people are still asleep and not even aware and aren't going to do anything. And you're going to run into that same 80-20 rule at your local level, but that doesn't mean that we stop there, but that's where we should begin our holding back the demonic forces. Let's start with protecting our own little community, our county, maybe our state, and pushing back from there. And that's a great point. The other thing, when you mentioned the 5th box and called upon our Lord Jesus Christ, what we as believers who have accepted the Lord into our heart as our Lord and Savior, what we have to remember is also stated in the Bible: greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world, meaning the demons that are in the world. We have to, like Ephesians 6 says, put on the armor and step off boldly. We have to take up the fight. We have to call this stuff out. We can't quit pushing, because greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. And that is what we have to hang our hat on. It don't matter if we're standing on an island or we're standing with 1,000 people. We know who is in us. Freedom comes from the Spirit that is in us, and we are free because of that. But we are trying to make things right here on earth, and it is the ultimate struggle. It is good versus evil, and as many, many pastors throughout the country, I suspect around the world, are suggesting that events look like we're kind of nudging into that area where the Bible would say these are the last of days. So we have to operate with that courage that when we have accepted the Lord into our heart, and we have to step off boldly, fight with our mouth, fight with our heart, fight with our finances, fight with everything we have against the evil that's surrounding us. Try to wake those people up. Try to get others. Try to save people. That's what we're doing. It's the good versus evil split that you mentioned. This whole dump of the Epstein stuff is nothing but evidence right in everybody's face. Now, a lot of people might choose not to look at it and not to get involved, but the rest of us have to keep pushing on and keep carrying on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Just like Thomas Massey said, anyone who sees this stuff and does nothing, it doesn't matter what your level of something is that you can do. It can be the smallest thing. Tell one person. If you do nothing, you're complicit too. And that is what's weighing on me. Mm-hmm. What can we do? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to be even remotely close to complicit in any capacity to the things that I've learned about.
Yeah. Well, for whatever it's worth, I know not to shift gears because we're just talking about the local level, but get a hold of your state legislators and say you better be standing with Tom Massey and you better bring some conclusion to this. The evidence is all there, and you cannot be complicit in covering this up. There is one, and at least you can do that. You can find their email addresses. You can call their offices, call the Capitol switchboard, get a hold of your state or your federal representative from your area, get a hold of your senator, and tell them you have to take action on these, if nothing else. But better yet is, after you do that, send an email, make a phone call, get involved locally, get people made aware, make them aware. If they chose not to hear it on TV or to turn on a Grammys instead, tell them with your own mouth. Tell them what's going on with your own mouth. Pizzagate is real. It's mentioned thousands of times, the Pizzagate and the grape soda. Just like was talked about 6-8 years ago and everybody poo-pooed it, Yep. Well, it's all in there. And you can choose to pretend it isn't, or you can take up something and take some step to do something about
it. Yep. Exactly. So heavy episode, but important. And we will certainly stay on this one. Nothing else from me, I don't think, Pops, if you're ready to wrap it up.
I am ready to wrap it up. It is a very, very heavy subject. It's something that isn't going away. But if we sit down and do nothing, it's only going to continue. It's only going to continue. More innocents are going to be hurt. Terrible, terrible stuff. Absolutely unimaginable. We have to stand up. Yeah. So my verse for tonight, in him and through faith in him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. And that also comes from Ephesians, that's 3:12. So stay faithful, get on your knees. We've said it many, many times. We all can get on our knees and pray for forgiveness for what this country's been involved with. Pray for strength to take up the fight against the evil that's among us.
Amen to that. Until next week, stay vigilant. Thank you so much for listening. We really do appreciate the support and truly love getting to share this message with anyone who wants or needs it. The best way for you to support the show is to subscribe, add a rating, and share with everyone you know. You can find us on Instagram, X, and at thefourthbox.com. We'll see you next Thursday at 6 p.m. Stay vigilant.